So my name is Rosie Flett. I'm going to be talking to you today about my dissertation research. The title has since changed actually since I've made these, so it's also Community Cohesion and Wellbeing, so looking at community wellbeing as well. But I haven't had time to change the slides, so apologies for that. So I study environment and business. I'm currently in my final year, hence why I'm working on my dissertation. And last year I spent my year in industry working for the sustainability team, and I led a project called Colour Hyde Park, which was putting murals in the area of Hyde Park, which is the student area where most of the students of the university live. So, right, there we go. So this is just a brief overview of what the presentation will be about today. So I'll be giving you a bit of background on what the Colour Hyde Park project was and sort of what it aimed to do. And sort of why I was involved in it. And then I'll be talking through my research aims and objectives and what I sort of hope to understand through my dissertation research. Then I'll be explaining why my research is important and sort of research gap that I'm filling and the answers that I'm trying to find through this research as well. And then I'll briefly discuss my methods and the sort of approaches that I took to finding out this information. And then I'll go through my initial findings and then talk about what this means. And then I'll talk to you about my final steps between now and my dissertation deadline, which is in just under a month. So I've only got initial findings at the moment. I haven't got everything on there, but I can give you sort of an idea of what the research is suggesting so far. So, Colour Hyde Park. It was a community mural project that we did last year. The aim was to sort of improve the local visual sort of appearance of the area, but also to sort of mend those relationships between students and the local residents, because there are a few sort of negative perceptions of students and they can sort of impact the communities quite negatively. We kind of wanted to give them a positive way of impacting the community and sort of facilitate those sort of relationships to be sort of bonded a bit more and improved. It involved the creation of 6 murals, 4 of which were through a design competition that was open to everyone, not just students. We encouraged all different artists to come along and to sort of design their own mural, and we asked them to sort of reflect either the sort of physical area of Hyde Park or the people or the sort of identity of Hyde Park. And we judged those murals through a community panel that was built from different representatives from across the community to, again, ensure that it was truly reflected by the Hyde Park community, so people walking through could sort of see aspects that they recognise and that they remember, to sort of instill that feeling of an identity again. We also did workshops at the local schools to get the primary kids involved, also mural map and a launch party as well. And I just popped the aims there below. So again, it was to improve the visual environment and sort of cover up some of the graffiti that is sort of blighting Hyde Park, and also make people feel a bit more pride and ownership for the area. And then also, like I said, to establish those relationships between the students and the local community. So my research aims were to understand how these university community partnerships, particularly art projects, can impact cohesion and well-being. So to see how, if they get people talking, get people engaging with each other, get people breaking down those barriers, and also with well-being, making sure that people feel safe and happy in the area that they live. And then I also chose to focus on Colour Hyde Park because of my geographical location. It just made it a lot easier, and also because Hyde Park is an area that is sort of suffering with a lack of cohesion, which I'll talk about a bit more later on. And yeah, these are my objectives, and these are sort of the little questions that I had in order to answer my aims and sort of focus my research a bit more. So I investigated the current level of cohesion and well-being in Hyde Park. I looked into the other projects that the University of Leeds does and other organisations as well in Hyde Park. And I also looked into how those projects affected the different stakeholders, because my research found that in order for these university community partnerships to be successful, every single person involved, every single organisation involved needs to be benefited in some way. So I really wanted to see how they affected all the different people that were involved, and then how it can encourage that cohesion, that working together. So, why is my research important? Well, like I said here, reports of loneliness and isolation are rising, not just for old people. We hear it a lot at the moment, like the elderly that struggle with it, but it's also a lot of people. I know a lot of students as well can struggle with that, especially when like first moving to an area. That can be a bit of an issue because you don't really know who to talk to and who to go to. Hyde Park is also an incredibly diverse neighbourhood. We've got a lot of people from around the world, a lot of people from South Asia. We've also got a lot of international students, and there's like a real difference in sort of age gaps as well with people, where we've got sort of 50% students in the area and 50% local residents. So that can cause a bit of a lack of cohesion because people might not feel that they can sort of go to each other and talk to each other and break down those barriers. And yeah, as I said, there's a lot of students in Hyde Park. It's roughly 50-50 students and permanent residents. And they can often exert negative impacts such as waste and graffiti, and also noise can be quite an issue in the area as well. And yes, my research showed that city universities like Leeds often are a lot closer to those neighbourhoods and those communities, and it can mean that they're more likely to exert those negative impacts onto those communities, but it also means that they're more likely to be engaged with what the university is doing. So there's kind of a unique opportunity there for the university to really get involved with the community and really use each other and like find those benefits from working with each other. So the university can benefit from using their research in the area and researching the community, but also applying those directly to policies and actually making change and seeing the changes that come from their research, so seeing it in practice. So yes, if I move on. So my methods. So first of all, I had the interviews. I interviewed 10 of the stakeholders of Colour Hyde Park. So this includes local councillors, some of the people on the project management team, artists, student volunteers, and local residents as well, and local organisations. This was to sort of understand how the project benefited them. But I also used the interviews as a way to, again, talk about this sort of feeling of community cohesion. So 7 of the 10 were past or current residents of Hyde Park. So I was able to talk to them about their sort of perception of Hyde Park, how they would describe Hyde Park, how they felt about living in Hyde Park as well, to just understand, again, those feelings of cohesion. And those were mostly qualitative, and I got a lot of information from them. I also had a section in my interview where I assessed the emotional response that people had to seeing murals. So seeing a photo of a mural and then seeing a photo of graffiti on a wall, I wanted to see the difference in how they felt emotionally when seeing those sort of visuals, like aids. And I also did surveys just to get a bit of a background again on the sort of community cohesion and well-being. So that was just to understand whether people sort of trust people in the neighbourhood, whether they feel like they own it, whether they feel like they have pride, just sort of see how people are feeling about the way they are in the community. And I also left a bit of space for qualitative comments just in case people wanted to explain why they were saying particular things. So my initial findings with the survey was really interesting. One of the final questions on the survey was to see whether they were student or a permanent resident. This was initially to make sure that I had that 50-50 ratio, that I wasn't like 90% students, 10% permanent residents, but that it was equal. But it actually gave me a bit more of an insight into how students and permanent residents see the community very differently. So students are a very transient sort of community because they're only there for sort of 8-9 months out of the year. They come in for 3 months and then they go back home. They might not feel like they're truly part of Hyde Park, but I've sort of seen that students can really provide a really positive message when they are in Hyde Park, and they can really be part of the community if they want to. So yes, students definitely reported higher levels of loneliness compared to the permanent residents. And also, as you can see from the graph down here, a lot less people know their neighbours. This was just for students. For permanent residents, that was a lot higher, maybe because they're living there for longer, they're sort of engaging more with their neighbours. Students also felt lower levels of pride and ownership, again suggesting that they might not feel like that is their home, and that they don't feel like they are one with the neighbourhood. Also, 75% of students don't feel like they can affect changes in Hyde Park, again suggesting that they don't feel like they're part of the neighbourhood or part of the community, and they can't actually make changes and make a difference. Some of the students here mentioned that they don't necessarily vote in this area, they choose to vote back home, or that they don't actually know how they would be able to affect changes in the area. So maybe then we need to have a bit of information there for the students as to how they can get involved and engage with people. And yeah, we said only 50% of people actually felt ownership for Hyde Park. So this wasn't just students, this was students and permanent residents as well. So that was a really interesting fact, that people don't necessarily feel like they fit into sort of the Hyde Park community, which was quite sort of sad to see that people were sort of struggling with that. And then also that 45% of people believe that people of different ages struggle to live in Hyde Park together. So for this one, I wanted to see how people perceived the sort of relations between students and the permanent residents. And what was really interesting was to see that it was the students seeing that more than the residents. So the students were finding that they themselves didn't fit, instead of the permanent residents maybe complaining about students. And I thought that was quite interesting to sort of see that side of it. And then finally, one of the questions was asking if they would attend an interactive mural workshop. I just wanted to see what people's reasons would be behind going along to these things. So 80% of people said that they would go, which is really exciting. And usually it's for, most people were saying sort of to meet new people, to get to know their neighbours, to get to know the community, but also to use their creative skills and just engage in art, which might be something they don't do sort of past like GCSE art kind of time. You don't always, pick up a paintbrush and do some painting, so it's a really good example to do that. And then also some qualitative findings from my interviews. So Hyde Park is a really diverse and caring community. They're really unique as well, but it's also got a really good sort of sense of identity as well, and people are really proud to be from Hyde Park. but a lot of people do have those negative perceptions as well. So it kind of shows that they are sort of struggling with that feeling of like cohesion and well-being. I'm just going to skip on to my findings here. So to relate this all to my research objectives, I've definitely found that there is a lower level of community cohesion and well-being, especially with students not necessarily feeling like they're that Hyde Park is their home. I've also found that the university does do quite a lot in the community, but there needs to be more using the community. There needs to be more sort of partnership projects instead of the university just going in and doing things. It needs to be working with the community as well, and it shows that it can build trust as well, which is really important for people to feel safe in their community. And also I saw that the art project worked really well, and every single stakeholder reported a benefit, maybe individual, maybe on an organisational level, but everyone reported some benefits in a way as a result of the project. And also what was really nice to see was that people were reporting positive emotions in response to murals, particularly in ones that they sort of recognised. So my interviews were saying that as long as the design reflects Hyde Park and maybe some of the architecture and some of the buildings in Hyde Park, that would give more of a positive response than maybe the more abstract things that we wouldn't necessarily recognise. So let's go through that because I've already talked through that. Next steps, I'll be going through my results again. I'm sort of writing them at the moment, but I'll be continuing to write those and then linking it back into the literature for my sort of discussion and conclusion. And then I'll be giving more information for the university or other universities to do other similar projects like Colour Hyde Park, just to ensure that they benefit the community heavily and sort of guide the community and put those sort of things in place that can really benefit the community instead of just giving the negative impacts that the university can sort of bring. There can be so many positive ones as well. And also advice for any other organisations as well that are hoping to do community cohesion. So my dissertation deadline is the 24th of March, so wish me luck. I've got a lot to write before then. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Rosie. We do have a question and answer session now. I've got a microphone to pass around. So does anyone initially have, I know, fancy, anything they want to ask Rosie?
I don't think I need a microphone, but the murals, when they start to degrade,
Yes.
have you asked the question about what kind of impact that's going to have?
I have not, no. So hopefully the murals with the Colour Hyde Park project, we've coated them all with anti-graffiti paint, which should mean that they're sort of held there for 20 plus years, it's saying. I don't know how many extra years than the 20 it would be. But no, not yet, but that would be something interesting to look into, I think. A lot of the studies that I've looked into are sort of short-term studies, and obviously I'm looking at this not even a year after the murals have been up, so I think it would be really interesting to look at the sort of long-term effects of projects like this. And like you said, once they're starting to degrade, how that would impact people. Maybe there could then be, you know, like a repainting of a new design on top of the old design, or people might want to keep older aspects and maybe just paint over the bits that are sort of peeling off. But I think it would be really interesting to look into that, but it might be a study that happens in 20 years, or it might be something that we could look into now, how people would feel if they sort of started to see these sort of objects degrading. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anything? One thing I'd like to say, because Rosie used to work in my team, so I sort of saw this project come to life, and don't think you're doing enough justice about how big it was and how amazing it is, and how people just talk about it so much and love walking around the community and sort of seeing these paintings. My question would be, because it's gone so well so far, what would you, with your expert knowledge, recommend for kind of like the next stages of this project? Because as far as I know, you plan to continue this, you want to kind of make it bigger and better, and that would be...
Yeah. So yes, phase 2 of the project has begun. Alejandra is one of the sustainability architects who's working on this year. I think one of my key suggestions, which is something that I've already put to the team, is about doing those workshops. I think what I've really found is that getting loads of different people together in one room and using art as a way for them to interact with each other and sort of engage with each other and find that sort of common ground has been really key. So the actual painting and the actual physical murals themselves are good, and they can sort of stimulate people to have conversations with each other and have positive conversations as well. The actual murals and getting people to get the actual workshops and getting people together are really key. Just sort of break down those barriers. So that's definitely something that I'd suggest. And also I think using the workshops in the local schools was really useful last year, and everyone has responded so positively to that, and it's something that the school kids will see on their like walk to school every day, and it's something that can hopefully inspire them to see that they can make an impact, and they are living in an amazing place that has such a unique identity, and they should be really proud of where they're from. And I think that was really key as well, so I really suggest that moving forwards that they also definitely use the sort of local schools as well, and make sure they can try and get. So one thing that's going to be quite hard is getting both students and local residents in the same room together, because they kind of work on different time schedules almost. Like I know students would prefer to stay on campus, so if we were to run something on campus, maybe at the Union, I feel like that would be quite well attended. But then people from the local residents, I wouldn't want them to have to feel like they have to come to campus to do this thing that should be in their community. So it's trying to get both of them in the same room together that I think is going to be really difficult. But I think something in the community, maybe an All Hallows Church is one of the like key locations in Hyde Park, and they really supported the project last year, so they might maybe run their own workshop. I think could be interesting, and maybe going on, maybe not this year, but maybe in a few years' time, once this is more of a almost like a structure to pass on to other, like a framework to pass on to other institutions, maybe they could pass it on to the community to run themselves. I think that could be really important for the community. Instead of the university going in and doing something for the community, they can just facilitate it and maybe support it and let the community make it their own. I think could be key for like much in the future.
The more ownership from the community.
Yeah,
and passing
definitely.
it down,
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anything else before we move on to the next presentation? No? Thank you very much, Rosie.
Thank you.